Okay, taking a photo using my favourite camera. It's either halide or ProCam. Now generally speaking I prefer ProCam because I can default it to RAW mode. Now let's have a look. Road Warrior, I don't want all that blue in the background, and that's about 2/3. A little bit of wobble, there we go. I'll walk down here and take another photograph because I want to get a bit more detail. Now this, as you can see, is actually my vineyard. Small as it is, it gives me about 200 bottles a year, which is nice. Okay, now let's take a photo back that way against the sun. Some nice shadows on the grass. And we're going to edit these in Affinity Photo using the RAW mode, Develop Persona. Let's have a look now at some basic edits to a RAW file for road warriors. That is, you're out on the road, you've taken some photos and you want to make some quick edits to upload it. So let's have a look at what I've got here first. Now, there we go. We'll take that RAW file there. I like the light on the grass. We'll start with that one first. Now when you open it up, you can see you've got a RAW file there. And to start directly, we're going to go directly to Basic Edits. It automatically opens in the Develop Persona of Photo and brings up the RAW file. Now we've touched the first one, which gives us the basic edit mode. Let's have a look. To start up here, you can move that up and down. You can see that changes it. Now if I accidentally leave that there, that's where it'll stay. But if I double tap it, it resets it to 0. So if you find you've accidentally left a slider somewhere and you can't remember what setting it was on, when you started, just double tap it, it'll go back to 0 and you can start again. So let's enable shadows and highlights first. I want to sharpen this image up. Now, shadows and highlights on the iPad is down the bottom. We enable that by turning it on. Now we'll drag the highlights to the left a little bit. I want to draw down some of the highlights. Take it down to about 67 I think. Draw down the highlights. Now push the shadows up to 26%, not too much. Just bring the shadows up, and this contrasts the whole thing a little bit. 26%. Well, that's 25, but that's pretty close. That's all we need. This is a very short exercise. Now, we're going to have a look at saturation, which is up a little bit. We want to bring up the saturation and vibrance a little bit. So we'll bring up the saturation to, I think, about 22 possibly. 22's all right. And we'll bring up the vibrance to 27. And already you can see that's quite a different image. Now, what do we want to change the colouring slightly. So we've got to enable white balance and change the temperature a little bit. At the moment it's 5013 Kelvin. That might be, it's about 4%. Let's bring that up. 6120, it's not too bad. That's not too cold, it's not too warm. You can just sort of see the brown tips of the grass, gives it that little warmth. Now we want to set the tint to about 11, I think. That's not bad. Now that warms the scene up, and you can play around with that to find the right balance if you like. Now the next thing to look at is clarity. This is a mid-tone enhancement. So the clarity is up there, second from the top, the second slider from the top. Now what will we put that on? And use this in moderation really. Bring that up to 36 or 37. That's quite a nice sharp picture that. You can see every blade of grass there. Now we'll have a look at the black point and the brightness. This really is the last part that we need to concern ourselves with. Scroll it down and we'll set the black point to about 5%. And you can see that's brought out some of that darkness, and we'll bring the brightness up to compensate to about 10%. Now that's all there is to it, really. Now that's one image that I've just drawn in, and I'll show you a more dramatic example in a moment. Now let's have a look at the split. Now you can see the difference. That's before and after there. That's before, and that's what it looks like now. That's quite dramatic, is it not? So that's a vastly improved image. The shadows are clear on the left-hand side, shadows from the posts and things, whereas in the before shot, the shadowing is quite indistinct. That's a markedly different image. You can sometimes rescue really bad images by doing that. Now let me show you a more dramatic episode, and I'll use exactly the same settings. Are you sure you want to return to the home screen? Yes, and that just saves it. That just exits without saving it. Now the one I want to go to, the image I want to pull in is down here. There's a whole lot of stuff there that I don't really want. There's the image I want, the raw file of the forest. Now I'll just go through and bring this one up. We're in basic mode again. Enable shadows and highlights right at the bottom, shadows and highlights. Drag the highlights left to minus 67. Okay, minus 67. Drag the highlights left to minus 67. Put some of the highlights back in. Push the shadows up to about 26. And there's the shadows. Now that forest over there is sharpening up a little bit. Increase saturation and vibrance to 22 and 27. Saturation. 22, vibrance to 26 and 27. Enable the white balance. Now we want to set that to 6119 and 11. 6119 and 11. Oops. There we go, 6119 and 11 for the tint. Okay, that's definitely warmed up the scene. It's probably a bit much actually. Now we want to look at clarity and enhance the mid-tones a bit. Take that up to 37 as we did before with the other image. Ah, 37. Those sliders are very sensitive. There we go, that's clarified it a bit. Black point and brightness. 10 and 5. Black point, 5, and the brightness, 5 and 10%. Now that's quite different. Let's have a look at the split image. Look at that. On the right hand side you can barely see, you can't see the forest for the trees. But if we go back out, now you can see the trees and the forest. And the image in the foreground, those brown sticks, that's just what they look like as I recall. Now, I don't want to develop this because I want to leave that image as it is. But if you have a look at the clouds in the sky, they're very indistinct there. And in that one, they've got quite a lot of detail. Now, if you're a road warrior, if you're out on the road taking photos, before you send the photo in to your workplace, to your magazine, into production, ready for the deadline, you can at least start off with a nice photo. White clouds with the dark edge, or just a yucky picture like that one. But remember, this is like a negative, the old negative films in a film camera. On the right hand side it's undeveloped. On the left hand side it's been developed. Now I don't want to save that, so instead of pressing develop, which is down the bottom there, and that fixes it in place in the photo and takes you back to your original image, your original editing screen, sorry. Now we'll push that out of the way, and you can see clearly there the right hand side, very murky. The left hand side, perfect, lovely. And that's what you want. Okay.